Thank you, John Corley. I'm sharing time with Deputy Connolly. Jay Nomage? Okay, all right. John Corley. John Corley, I would like to start by congratulating the island fishermen for sticking with the fight that they have started, and particularly, to be parochial about it, the fishermen from Donegal itself. John Corley, we started a struggle through the committee in the last Dáil, and I must say it was thanks to the work of the chairman, Andrew Doyle, that this managed to progress to the stage that a report was published. And I know he would like to support this bill, but he had to speak against it today, and that's the anomalies, I suppose, of being in government at this stage. But the report that he was the chairman of was very much in favour of this issue. And I think it is a sad indictment that after all the work carried out by Dáil committees, that reports fall on deaf ears within departments. I am not just singling out the Department of Agriculture on this, but I think it is true across all departments and for many committee reports which end up lying idle. So that is why we are here today with a bill to try and achieve what should have been achieved when the report was published first. What is left out of this process is the island fishermen themselves, who have vested their trust in the Oireachtas to deliver on what is a reasonable demand. How many fishermen have been pushed further into debt by our inaction? How many have left fishing entirely? And indeed, how many have left our islands because we have been unable to carry this process through for them? I believe that we all lose when someone has to leave an island or gives up traditional fishing, particularly when it's down to the inaction of the government. The Island Fisheries Heritage Licence Bill 2017 would go some way to showing that the Oireachtas is actually going to stand up for fishermen and what should be their rights. This bill on its own will not go the way of reversing the downward trend in island fishing populations, but it would help empower communities to further fight for their own survival, and that is what we should be aiming to achieve, at the least here today in this House. The Joint Subcommittee on Fisheries, in its report promoting sustainable rural, coastal and island communities, and in its final recommendation stated that greater support for communities be provided. In Recommendation 10, the report recommends that the Government examine the feasibility of the issuance of heritage licences to rural, coastal and island communities, and such licences would optimally facilitate traditional fishing practices. I think that the committee goes on to say it all when it states that, and I quote directly from the report, "Regard to inshore fisheries, the subcommittee has some concerns. It would appear that plans advanced to develop the management of inshore fisheries now appear to be in abeyance. It would also appear that there is a paucity of data, in particular to inshore fisheries in the context of fishing and the circumstances under the 10-metre LOA category of vessel, the bulk of the fleet. It is clear that it is upon this category that many of the communities which are the focus of this report depend to a significant degree, economically, socially and demographically, and even culturally in onshore fisheries. In this context, the subcommittee asked the question as to what degree the government is in a position to plan for the future of this industry, and by extension these communities. It appears that there is a very fragmented governance of the maritime sector, so the subcommittee also queries whether other simpler models should not be examined by the government. I think that says it all. And we would need to take a long look at how our department governs the issue of fisheries and find ways to reform this. But it certainly seems to me that it's definitely broken. The bill itself, I believe, is in line with the Common Fisheries Policy. Article 20 states, small offshore islands which are dependent on fishing should, where appropriate, be especially recognised and supported in order to enable them to survive and prosper. If it was ever appropriate, this is it. Indeed, in Section 19 of the Common Fisheries Policy, it also states that Member States should have endeavoured to give preferential access for small-scale, artisanal or coastal fishermen, which further strengthens the support for island fishermen. Now, I'm no friend of the EU, but at least in this case the EU is standing up for island fishermen, which we aren't doing here. I know that the island community have looked around Europe as well to see if this model is anywhere else, and have found similar models already working. One in particular is in Galicia in Spain, which this model takes heavily from. So the government cannot say that this does not exist and it is too difficult, which they probably will try and say here today. The island communities have done great work in getting this issue this far, and hopefully we can get them the rest of the way. But it would be remiss of me not to mention the wider coastal communities and fishermen who are also suffering, who I feel this model would help as well, for the very same reasons. The one drawback that they have is that they don't have a distinct area, and that an island has, and in a lot of cases are working almost alone. I believe that they should be included in this arrangement, and indeed the Oireachtas Committee did as well. But island communities are not properly represented, and that should not make their issue any less important. It just makes it harder for them to get a hearing. I would just like to finish by saying well done to IMRO in getting this far. And I hope that this Oireachtas does not let them down, and by extension that the Department will actually honour the recommendations of the Committee report and respond to the express wishes of the Oireachtas. Thank you.